Horror Lies.
Hey guys, Rob from Georgia here with you. It is week 328. And man, we get ever closer to that Christmas theme week, don't we? And I'm your Wednesday night host, and second week in a row, I'm going to kind of stay niched in not just the X-Files world. I'm going to take on, look at the 2008 film I Want to Believe, which is about 6 years after the season 9 finale, The Truth, premiered. And of course, 98 would have been the first theatrical film, Fight the Future. The two films really couldn't be a whole lot different in terms of their mythology. This is a Chris Carter film, I Want to Believe. Comes out in 2008. And of course, Frank Spotnitz, he contributes in writing, and really they're a composer and they're cinematographer, and really this is a family affair when it comes to the X-Files and at this point. And of course brings back David Duchovny as Fox Mulder, Gillian Anderson as Dana Scully, and Billy Connolly as Father Joseph will sort of be, I don't know, it's hard to determine whether he's somewhat of a antagonist, protagonist. He plays an interesting role in this in terms of dichotomy between Dana and Fox. And of course, Mitch Pileggi will return, but we don't have some of the original core mythology, the alien mythology. Some of those characters, the cigarette smoking man is absent, and as well as quite a few other veteran X-File actors. This movie stands as a standalone, and I'll be honest, and this is again my DVD release. I've never upgraded to Blu-ray for some reason, but I'll be honest, in 2008 when this movie came out, I probably was part of the chorus of why this, why now, and this just feels out of place, and I don't know, but some years removed, it's what, 2019 now, and looking back at this the last few days, watched it a few times with the commentary on once. I'm telling you, man, this movie, sometimes it just takes a few years for movies to sort of evolve and sort of relive, I guess, is maybe, I don't know, for the lack of a better word, refind its place in how we look at films that perhaps maybe we didn't look on so kindly years past, but then we revisit them and they find a new place in our life. And I'm starting to have a whole new sort of approach to this film, being that the X-Files ends in 2002 and we're 6 years removed. I mean, it should have been an extremely pleasant surprise to find out that the X-Files as a standalone was bringing out a new film. But I think a lot of people were hyped up on the idea that this is going to re-engage with the core mythology, the alien colonization, maybe be a direct sequel of sorts to Fight the Future. And what it was is really it was a tipping of the hat to the creature feature sort of standalone thriller episodes that were also very important to the X-File lore. And it stands alone, it stands apart, but what it does ingeniously is it brings two characters who, had lived for quite a long time on our TV screens through all the, 9 seasons and the return to 10 and 11, 16 and 18. This film does an incredible job at just reestablishing that there were other X-File episodes other than alien colonization and UFOs and everything else. It works beautifully as a standalone. The music has never been better. The cinematography, they filmed this up north. There's a bit of CGI employed, but quite frankly, it's hard to notice at times. It's a snowy Vermont. It's the atmosphere that they create is, it's a snow movie, one. I mean, the X-Files, I Want to Believe, is a snow movie through and through. You get just snow, snow, snow. And quite frankly, a lot of it is atmospheric snow. You've got the forest woodlines in the background, the blustery dark snow, and it just adds to that atmosphere of what Mulder and Scully are going through as characters. Really, they're being both pulled away from one another in opposite directions. but both are still following after things that are pulling them in directions that maybe, quite frankly, they do need to move forward, but they can't because of Dana's loss of her son, William, if you remember, towards the latter end of the seasons. And then Mulder, of course, is still being pulled in the direction of his lost sister, who he believes was abducted by aliens. And so where Scully is actually the one who, when the FBI reaches out because of a missing agent, they reach out to Scully and ask if there's any way that they can pull Mulder back into the fold. He's hesitant at first, but she kind of pulls him in, and then when he does agree and starts to get sucked in, and of course the main motivating factor is the loss of his sister and that renewed interest in looking and searching, and you never know, will this case be the case that brings him. But you know, they're not FBI anymore. She's a medical doctor, and he's just sitting at home in his office, man, collecting paper, clipping out newspaper articles on X-File related type things, and we get a nice view when we re-meet Scully and Mulder after all this time, 6 years. We find Mulder in his office, and of course, you know, he's got the pencil sticking in the ceiling, and it's a lot of tipping of the hats to great moments in the X-File. But he's got a beard, and he's sort of this, I'm glad I'm outside the FBI, and just leave me alone. I'll live an isolated life. I don't care. Scully, though, is she's being wrapped up. She works at a Catholic. If you remember, she is a Catholic, and her faith does come in throughout the X-Files lore in terms of how she approaches via her science and the cases that she's confronted with. Her faith is tested from time to time, and so she's dealing with a boy who has a blood disorder of types, and really it's to the point where even this Catholic hospital is about to disengage with him and send him off to basically live the last few years, if that, of his life. And she refuses. She wants to find the cure, something that will save his life. And it just so happens in this film, and I think it's extremely relevant to the narrative, that this boy's name is Christian, and her faith gets called, and is tested on the firing line, so to speak, by this Father Joseph, who happens to be a psychic. Well, he's a former Catholic priest, but unfortunately for him and for others, he's a convicted pedophile now. But now he's suddenly receiving these visions of these of women who are being abducted, tortured. They're just disappearing, and so he sort of comes in through the back door, and I think he's looking for redemption, atonement of his sins. Many of us would probably say, good luck, there is no atonement for that kind of sin. You have wrecked the lives of children. There is no forgiveness in that. But this movie at its core begs the question, is there forgiveness? Is there atonement? Even when you're at the bottom of the bucket, as this former father Catholic priest is, and Dana will be tested on her own faith and how she views him. Mulder, though, being, you know, the ever want to believe, wants to believe him only in that through solving this case or helping to solve this case, maybe that brings him a step or two closer to finding his long lost sister. And so the two are being, you know, while they're suddenly being diametrically shoved off in different, Father Joseph at the core of this keeps them traveling a somewhat familiar road, bringing them back together. And you know, we're entertained by a lot of interesting things. Like we know, you know, they've been living together. I think they're married, and so they live a life together now, and that will be strained by her search for the cure for this young boy and his ever increasing involvement, in which she tries to get him out of it because she sees their lives getting sucked back into this lifestyle that she just hates and wants to be away from, as she calls it, the darkness seeping into their heart. And so this movie has so much going on, not just on the surface, but as you go further down in just name of characters and what the two are being. It does a wonderful job. This is Chris Carter directing, so there's no one better to approach this film thematically by reintroducing a lot of old themes that we had encountered before, but through this standalone case that does a wonderful job at just pulling these two FBI agents out of retirement and allows them to realize that their primary calling in life is not necessarily fully lost through this case as it unfolds, and it will bring the characters to a harrowing climactic end, in which case Mitch Pileggi will come in one of the greatest last moments of a film TV show, in which you find two main characters in the end sharing an extremely intimate, sentimental moment. And in this case, it's Fox and Skinner. And and if you're just stooped into the X-Files or have been in the past, and this film deserves to be rewatched, rethought in light of all the years past, in light of what it was attempting. We all badger on Halloween 3 Season of the Witch, but then as we realize what that movie was its intention, it's gained a cult following years past, and this X-Files film is another that ought to do the same. It ought to be re-looked at, it ought to be re-examined, it ought to be rethought of in terms of just a lot of the things that are going on in here and what Chris Carter's trying to do. And I'll say this towards the end of this. This TV show, film, X-Files universe, its great failing was not finding its proper niche theatrically. We'll just go with that. Theatrically. This deserved to have been like a 7, 8, 9 film franchise on the big screen. This is where it belonged all the time. And unfortunately, seasons 10 and 11 never do justice at all to how this should have been continued. It really missed in an incredible, and not at the fault of Chris Carter and others, but at the fault of the studio system, who just didn't have enough faith in it, and it's absolutely just so tragic and unfortunate. But this is a great, great movie, and with a really great end, and pretty disturbing, and the themes are multi-layered. Just not only Scully's, her link to this boy that she's trying to find a cure for, but how she approaches death unwillingly, and how the main antagonist of this film and what he is doing to avoid death. It's a great morality tale on death and how we should face death, perhaps, or how we face death sometimes. We just want to do everything we can to avoid it. So there's a lot going on here. And though Mitch Pileggi only fills a minor role in this film, the role he does, the scene that he does get is so awesome. It's so awesome. So anyways, here at week 328, I encourage you, challenge you to go take a look at this again, and just think about some of the things I said, and maybe reapproach it in a different way. And I wonder if you might come to some of the similar conclusions that I myself have reached. I love this film. I absolutely love it, and in some ways, it's as good as Fight the Future, but they're both separate films. One deals with a core mythology, the alien. The other is a standalone film that does something totally different. And the great tragedy isn't whether one or the other is a hit or a miss or just didn't fulfill. The tragedy is this thing was left off the big screen where it ought to have been a great franchise cinematically. I mean, it just missed it. It's missed its opportunity, and that's the tragedy in all of this. So on week 328, Rob from Georgia, it's championships Saturday in college football. My Bulldogs are coming on. Tomorrow's a great game, Buffalo and Baltimore. We're heading towards the playoffs, and man, football is looking pretty fun right now. So as always, we end these things off with Go Bills.